Welcome to episode 253 of the Reptile Gumbo podcast. I don't have my normal co-host. I've got my dad.
Got an upgrade.
Sure. Katie's got stuff to do. Robert may or may not be here. He had some work stuff come up, so he may or may not be here tonight. I'm here. My dad's here. He's not a reptile person, so this should be interesting. So we'll see how this goes.
I'm responsible for him being one, though.
That is true. This is all your fault. Let's go ahead and do sponsor stuff real quick. I'm not as good. Katie's got this down, but we'll go with Little Shop of Horrors. Check out Little Shop of Horrors. They operate a commercial feeder breeder facility based out of San Antonio, Texas, and specialize in rats, mice, and dubia roaches, Madagascar hissing cockroaches, and more. As feeder breeders, they focus on the nutritional needs of the animals that consume them. They provide feeders for everyone from Lils, L-I-L-S. We lost connection for a second, but it's fine because the people who will hear the recording won't realize that until right now when they hear me saying we lost connection for a second because our internet sucks. We pay a lot to have our internet be bad, apparently. But we're back. So hey to the folks in the chat. Now you can hear us. All right, so go check out Lil's Shop of Horrors, L-I-L-S Shop of Horrors for all your feeder needs. Herp's Reptile Shows. Let's go ahead and go through those dates real quick. Slidell, Louisiana is coming up April 5th, April 6th. Belton, Texas, April 26th, April 27th. West Monroe, Louisiana, May 3rd, May 4th. Stillwater, Oklahoma, which is too far north for me, which is May 31st and June 1st. Denison, Texas, June 7th and June 8th. Conroe, Texas, June 14th and June 15th. I will be there for that one. Longview, Texas is June 21st and June 22nd. And then Sulphur, Louisiana, June 28th and June 29th. Yeah, Lewis, Katie had a change. She's a little different tonight. Hi, Nathan. You can listen to the morning on YouTube, but I still haven't put out last week's. By the way, if you're listening to this, I haven't put out last week's episode yet. I'll put it out tonight. We had a busy week. We had to leave, go for a wedding this past weekend, and then my parents came into town, and so at some point the podcast will get put out, and then this one will get put out. So it's free. It'll be all right. Y'all be okay. Also, if you're looking for LED UVB light bulbs, check out VivTech products. Use code GUMBO22 to save 15% on all of your VivTech products. If you're not using VivTech LED bulbs at this point, I just assume you don't love your animals. So use code GUMBO22, save 15%. Go check out their bulbs, all their smart devices, the cameras, all that stuff. Go check it out. I think I got all my ducks in a row now. And my internet's working. All right. How's it going? Yeah,
it's going great.
You having fun?
Yeah.
You sure?
Oh, yeah.
So my parents are in town this week because it's spring break for us, and so they're visiting. And Sam's getting all of his barbecue fixes in, and crawfish this weekend.
Yeah.
And you've already had boudin.
Yep.
Because you moved too far away from Louisiana to get good boudin and crawfish.
It makes you appreciate it more when you get it.
So basically food. They just came to visit for food.
And a granddaughter.
Oh, yeah, there is that. That's fine. And then we went to the rodeo yesterday. Well, we didn't go to the rodeo. We went to the fair part of the rodeo and didn't do the rodeo yesterday. So,
but we did like Houston rodeo stuff. We bought cowboy boots.
Yeah, we did. But my daughter got cowboy boots. Not me. I did not get cowboy. I'm not a cowboy boot person. I did not get cowboy boots. We saw goats, and we saw cows. So that was rodeo-ish. And my computer's clicking at me. So hopefully I still have internet. We'll see what happens. Stick with us if we do or do not have internet the rest of the night. All right, let's get on to our guest so I can quit rambling. Hi, Kyle. Just folks in the chat. All right, our guest tonight is, I lost my mouse. There we go. Travis Johnson of Living Legless Reptiles. How's it going, Travis?
Good. How are you guys?
Good. I asked listeners who they wanted to have on the podcast, and you were one of our suggestions. Someone said they wanted you on because of you keep bull snakes, which we will talk about bull snakes too. Just big, angry Pituophis that hiss at you very loudly.
I love my Pituophis. Bull snakes were one that I fell in love with. All the species I work with, I kind of fell in love with all at the same time. I when I first got into reptiles, I was afraid of reptiles when I was a kid, which sounds odd for, a guy with, hundreds in his basement now. But um, I was playing music professionally at a pretty young age, playing heavy metal and rock and roll and stuff like that. And my guitarist had a ball python that introduced me into reptiles. And I loved animals, especially exotic animals. I always wanted to do, zoology or marine biology or something like that. But then I got introduced to reptiles, and then it was a crazy ride since then. Started working at a reptile shop in Buena Park, California. Started working at a reptile zoo that was like a 400 animal like private collection in Buena Park as well. And got introduced to all these different species. Kind of all at once. Those are the animals that I, ended up, building a collection and, working towards, bull snakes were right there. We had a huge adult male at the zoo that I worked at that we took for educational programs and things like that. And I just absolutely loved that snake. Got myself, my own in like 2007. I think I first got my first bull snakes. I had kind of a long time before I could produce them. That's kind of one downside, I suppose, of having a lot of the different species that I work with is, the reptiles have completely funded themselves. At some point, I could only grow with money that, reptiles, provided. And so, I have all these different species and, I couldn't dive down the rabbit hole too many different directions at one time. And so I had like a pair of bull snakes for years until they were old enough to breed. And then I went to breed them, and they were both males.
That does make it hard.
Yeah. And, and so then I raised up, I bought a couple females, and I checked, at that point, the day they came in to make sure that I wasn't going to screw that up and waste 3 years of my life. But, and so I didn't start producing them until, I don't know, 2010 or something like that, 2011. Yeah. But I've produced them since. They're phenomenal snakes. I don't think they get enough credit.
So what else do you keep besides the bull snakes?
So I have a pretty good collection of bull snakes. I have carpet pythons are kind of my main focus. I work with a bunch of different morphs and localities of carpet python. I'm a weirdo purist, so I don't have anything that doesn't have a bloodline and a pedigree that comes along with it. I've got Nova Guineas. I have Darwins. I have albino Darwins. I have Popwins. I have coastals. Coastals are probably my favorite and probably my main focus as far as my collection is concerned. I have Rockhampton locality coastals, Brisbane's, tigers, hypos, caramels. I do a lot with the impen caramels and stuff. I also do a lot of locality boas. That was another species or group that I got really into really early on. So I've been keeping like Argentine boas, for instance,
Yeah.
for a long time. I've been producing them since 2013. I work with Argentine boas, long-tail boas, boa constrictor, lanceolata. We have San Isidro Costa Rican boas. I have crawl Ks. I've produced crawl Ks for a couple years now. Tarahumara mountain boas, Tamalupia boas.
For all your dwarf boas.
Yeah, I have a lot of, other than the Argentines, a lot of the localities I work with are the dwarf stuff. Not for any other reason than I like locality stuff over morphs. And so I don't own a morph boa. I've never owned a morph boa.
See, I'm the other direction. I like the morph stuff, and I'm not big on the locality stuff.
Yeah, when I was getting into it, this was apologize for my cough. I talked way too much today. It's like meeting after meeting after meeting. My voice is shot. When I got into reptiles, this was, I was 16, 17 years old or whatever. So it's been about 20 years. And at that time, the kind of main focus for reptile people, reptiles weren't nearly as popular as they are today. And so the morph thing wasn't as much of a thing as at least the influences and, people I looked up to and, got me into reptiles and worked with me and, taught me everything I know at the zoo and at the reptile shop and stuff. The main focus was kind of, what's rare, what's obscure, and so localities kind of fell into that where, a lot of the rare boa constrictor species or locality carpet pythons or, a lot of this stuff was, you didn't really see. I mean, and if you did, it was, this collection or that collection. Even when you went to, reptile shows, it was a more of a mix than nowadays where, in the last, I don't know, 10 years, I'd say, you show up to a reptile show and, you have either a whole thing of, ball pythons to a table or,
crested geckos,
morph boas, or crested geckos, leopard geckos. You have, a lot of the more common, easier to keep species, with that come in a lot of different colors as opposed to, the kind of rare, obscure stuff that you don't, see as often. And that's just, I hope my coughing doesn't ruin your video.
It'll be all right.
I'm trying to chug some water and stuff, but that's just what fascinated me. Where these things come from, the environment that they live. Some of these are very, niche specific in their, how they live and things like that. And so that's always fascinated me. The other species that I work with are blood pythons. I work with bloods, and I have some Sumatran shorttails, the pumpkin heads. I've always loved that species. To me, they're one that I got into really early on, where all you could get was wild caught, stuff that were super, bitey and, nobody liked them. But I just thought it was so fascinating that these animals, looked like leaf litter and would bury themselves and lived in these swamps, and they were hard to, get feeding and stuff. And, that kind of thing just, drew me in more. So I work with those guys. I also work with olive pythons, Macklot's pythons. I like the Liasis stuff. I don't have any duns yet, but they're on my short list. Trying to think.
So you got a
what
lot of
else.
boas, a lot of pythons. Are the bulls the
Yeah.
only colubrids you have?
I also work with corn snakes. Corn snakes were one that was like the fifth snake I got. Was a corn snake that my roommate wasn't taking care of, and I kind of inherited. And I quickly thought they were pretty neat. And I didn't keep and breed them much in the early days because they were real cheap. I mean, it got to a point where I was like, I couldn't give them away for like $25 a pop. And so I didn't produce a lot of them, but I've always had them in my collection. And it was probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. Maybe it's been a little bit longer than that now, but I've started kind of amassing more, and now I've got a collection of, I don't know, 22 of them or something like that, of various things that I like, and they're cool. I think they're a unique species that people have kind of, at least at one point, passed up because they were cheap, and
Well, yeah,
I've always liked them. I mean,
you couldn't be the next millionaire doing those $15,
yeah.
$20 snakes.
If you think you're going to be the next millionaire breeding reptiles, you're in a world for hurt. That shit's not going to happen. I mean, that being said, in the 20 years that I've been doing this, I've been really fortunate that for a very long time my reptiles have paid for themselves. I haven't paid a dime of my own money to take care of them in a long time. I mean,
I cannot say the same thing.
It's not easy though. I mean, I work a 50+ hour job on top of it.
Are you breeding your own rodents?
No, I tried to go down that road, but I am highly allergic to something about them. I'm
allergic to the work. The work with
no, I'm like genuinely allergic to them. When we were at the shop that I used to work at, that was like the grunt duty. The new employee got to clean the rodents, and we only had like 2 8-foot racks or whatever. It was like 4 or 5 wide or something. 4 or 5 bins wide. And I couldn't get through the first 3 tubs without my eyes watering, my nose was running. I mean, I'm hacking, I just, my allergies just would attack me. And by the time I'd get to, 3 rows in, I was just a useless mess. And I've suffered through it because that was, what the new guy did. But when it came down to, do I breed my own rodents? I don't have and haven't had the space for something like that in a fair amount of time. And B, I just couldn't do it. I mean, I've had a handful of bins in my garage, and we did produced our own like fuzzies and pinkies and stuff to get babies going. But even that has subsided, and I've done away with that just because I was tired of my garage smelling like rodents. I mean, I've got a local breeder that I pick up live stuff from every once in a while to get, picky feeders going. But other than that, I buy all frozen thawed. I go through about $1,000 worth of rodents a month. So, it's, I just couldn't produce enough to make that worth it for me. I would have to convert my entire garage probably to rodent production, and that would make my whole house smell. And I have plans for the garage to expand into different rooms for the reptiles, because right now it's kind of a catch-all. I have a baby room and an adult room. And with all the species that I work with, it would be really beneficial to me to have A couple separate rooms where like, okay, the colubrids could go here and I could hibernate the whole room rather than right now, all the racks of the bull snakes and all the, racks of the corn snakes have to get rolled out to the garage every, year and, cool them down and hibernate them and all that. It's just a lot of work. It would be nice to, set it and forget it.
With your liasis, I'm assuming you're breeding them. Do you ever deal with? I always worry about with like cannibalism in those, and I've heard that people don't have that issue, but they always have that history of being snake eaters.
I've never, so I haven't successfully bred liasis yet. But I have not had any cannibalize each other, but I've had them kill each other. Not olive pythons, but I've had a couple Maclots pythons end up killing each other and stuff. It's always a risk, but I've yet to deal with anything like that. Honestly, I haven't experienced anything that was any different than pairing up other species of snakes together. I've had carpet pythons go at it, where a female or a male grabs a hold of the other one and tries to, constrict it and jacks them all up. I mean, sometimes they come out of it fine. Sometimes they've, I've had a couple male carpet pythons not seem very right in the head from after, an attack from a female, so I've never experienced the cannibalism thing. With my olive pythons, I've paired them every year for the last 3 years now. I cool them down. I end up putting them together. I don't offer food during the winter for any of my stuff that's breeding anyway. So it's difficult to get any type of feeding response out of a lot of the stuff that I work with during the winter. But yeah, I set it and forget it. I've put them in there and left them for weeks and weeks on end. And I keep thinking, I'm going to come around the corner one day and I'm just going to have, one female olive python. And I haven't had that problem.
That's why I like boas. I never have to worry about that with boas. I've never had one show any aggression with another boa in there. Not once.
I've had a boa eat another boa before.
Did you really?
Yeah. They were babies. Stupid me. I had a pair of boas that were real young that were in this like display Exoterra cage. And they were young. I mean, they were eating like hopper mice. And one of them ate, the other one was still eating. The other one saw that the other one was eating and started on the back end while this one was, finishing up the front end. He ended up getting to a point and he just kept going. I mean, I somehow kept him alive. I got the one to throw up the other one. But I had that with bull snakes too. Stupid me when I was young and
they're fast eaters in general. Bull snakes and stuff.
They're lightning fast. Yeah, they're chomping it down, and I don't feed them, huge meals, so they're chomping it down quick. But I had thrown them together I had fed them separately in their enclosures, and then I was trying to do some spot cleaning real fast while I was feeding, and this one bin was fairly bad, and so I threw him in with the other one next to it. You know what I mean? And by the time I had that bin cleaned out and ready to go, I went to grab him and throw him back in, and the female had him about halfway down. And same deal. I kind of like flicked her in the nose a couple times, and she spit him out, and he was fine. I mean,
If they're anything like I've got Louisiana pines, and when they go into feeding mode, it takes a while to get them out of feeding mode. Like you can't put anything in front of them once they're in feeding mode.
They were literally my first pair of bull snakes, and so I just didn't know any better. I thought, oh, they'll be fine, and yeah, no, not fine.
Kyle in chat says someone posted that their rough scale female ate a male. That's crazy. I can't imagine my rough scales eating another rough scale. The only thing first I've had when I put Kenyans together, I put a pair of Kenyans together. I closed the tub, moved on, and I heard some thrashing. I opened it, and the female had the male. But that's just because Sambos have a very strong feeding response, and if anything sweeps past their head when they're thinking food, they're going to grab it.
Yeah.
And I separated them, and they were fine, and they went on and they made, and they had babies and everything. But worse, I had I'll feed. I'll have a bunch of babies in a tub together and throw pinkies in just to see who wants to eat. And then you have to watch that because you'll have that same that Lady in the Tramp moment where one grabs the butt and one grabs the other side and they start eating towards each other.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty uncommon, but I mean, you got to think that it's survival of the fittest, and so they're gonna get. I mean, they'll eat each other. I mean, they're not above it. Just because they're not, a snake eater. That doesn't matter. Anytime you're pairing stuff up, I've had snakes attack other snakes and yeah, maybe they didn't eat them because I didn't let it go or anything. But yeah, I mean, there's been plenty of times where I've gone to pair up like I said, a pair of carpet pythons or something, and the female's in food mode, and I mean, and that's all, so I've gotten better about kind of alerting the animal that I'm introducing. With carpets, like combat males, and so the males are rearing ready to go looking for a female because I'll put them in a bin together. They'll combat a little bit. It's real innocent, and and then I take them apart and I throw them in with a female, and they think they won because the other guy's gone, and and so but I have to alert the female that I'm introducing the male into his enclosure or her enclosure because there's times where she turns around and thinks that she's getting food, and then the first thing moving is a male coming in, and she just grabs it. I mean, a lot of the stuff I work with have incredibly strong feeding responses, so you have to be mindful of that. But yeah, I don't have to use any type of kid gloves when it comes to introducing the olives or anything. I do the same thing. I open the bin, or open the cage, I kind of touch the olive python with my hook, and most of my stuff is pretty hook trained. I've kind of taught them that, hey, if I'm touching you with the hook, there's no food coming, and they seem to be fairly receptive to that, trait. And so then I'll introduce the male, and I haven't had anybody, knock on wood, I haven't had anybody eaten yet.
So I'm assuming with bulls, since you're talking about with boas, that you're focused on locales with bulls instead of any morph stuff with them, or is it kind of a mix?
It's a hot mess. I have locales, but bulls and corns are kind of one where I open the floodgates, and I get to play mad scientist with the mutations and stuff. I have every morph there is in bull snakes, I believe. At least every single and double gene.
How many is that?
I don't know.
I mean, it's not. I know it's not like ball python or corn snake numbers because those morph numbers are.
So I think it's somewhere in the 30s.
Okay, it's more than I thought.
That's my entire bull snake collection, though. I mean, and so I either have the every mutation you can make, or I have the ability to make every mutation you can make. Even the multi-gene combo stuff. I mean, I have a lot of multi, triple, doubles, triples. I haven't. I've been really focused with the bull snakes in pairing something that has, this animal has a one visual or two visual traits, and the pair, the opposite animal is the, maybe has a different trait, and they're het for each other.
Yeah.
And so I get a mad scientist mix of like, 4, 5, 6, phenotypes in one clutch. I pretty much don't breed like albino to make a bunch of albinos. I've very rarely bred, single gene stuff together to just make more of, one whole clutch of this, I got 2 phenotypes at bare minimum out of a clutch, each clutch that I've produced. I like the variety. I like not knowing what's in the next egg.
Yeah.
And it's allowed me to produce a lot of really cool, like 3 gene, 4 gene combo stuff that, I just kind of get lucky and hit the odds on. It's one animal out of a whole clutch of, and it's 3 genes or 4 genes or something.
It's kind of how I am with my boas. I like the reason I like boas, and I know you don't do the morphs, but I like all the incomplete dominant stuff you can do in boas, just because of when it mixes together and how variable it is, and then you can mix it and throw it in with something like albino. And I love that when you get a litter and there's 4 or 5 different things in there, and they all can, even the same genes can look different from each other. A hypo can look completely different from another hypo in the same litter. Right.
Yeah. Hypo gene. Of the boa mutations out there, I think hypo is one of the coolest ones because, like you said, it's so highly variable. You almost don't have a hypo or a sun glow that look identical to the next one. They each kind of have, this one's got more yellow, this one's got more orange, this one's got more red. I mean, this one has more varied pattern. This one has almost no pattern. I mean, that hypo gene is super cool in how variability it has.
Do you do hog islands? I know you said you had some of the other locale.
I want them, but I have I've been really picky with hogs because of that pedigree and wanting pure stuff. There's a lot of hog islands out there that aren't really hog islands.
There's a lot of mutts, yeah,
and I just I can't do it. I can't. I got to know where it comes from. I got to know who produced it, and yeah, they're one that I've turned down more often than obviously I haven't purchased. That being said, some of the localities that I don't have, or some of the things that I don't have, are solely just because the opportunity hasn't presented itself. I've had, I can only grow my reptile business with the money that my reptile business produces. And so there's a lot of different stuff that I haven't purchased because when I had the money for this, those weren't available.
All right, you can't be responsible and do this hobby. You got to stop that. You got to be irresponsible and randomly buy stuff.
I'm really picky with that kind of thing, and so I have to. And so there's been a lot of times where I'm like, oh, I want this, this one thing that I'm chasing after. And then, it's not available when I have, some funds to spend. And then I see something else that, was on my bucket list at one point. And I was like, oh, let's get those. And then, it's 10 minutes later that, the thing I wanted, is available over here. And I'm like, well, crap. Like,
hog islands are always a cool one. You talked earlier about raising up 2 snakes and then finding out they were both male. That's my one. I was raising up a hog island for years, and I finally was like, why is this thing just not getting bigger? It should be getting thicker at some point and bigger. And I was like, let me sex this. And it was a male. And I was like, son of a bitch. It was supposed to be a female when I bought it. And the guy when I bought it originally, he wouldn't come down on the price because he was like, it's a female. And I tried to haggle with him and he wouldn't. I was like, all right, it was pretty. And then and then it was a male. It's still pretty. They're a fun one because of the hypogenes. They naturally have that hypomelanism, and they will always look like dog shit whenever you want to show them off to somebody.
Yeah.
I have found they look great when no one's around, but the moment you're like, hey, come look at this, and it's dark and dull, it doesn't look, I'm like, I swear it looks better than this all the other times.
The Tarahumaras are like that. So the Hog Islands can vary in color depending on, I think it has more to do with temperature than anything else. But the Tarahumara mountain boas, do the same thing. They'll be, really light and gray, and then they can be like, poop brown.
Yeah.
And therethere's times in the middle of the night I've gone and checked on them and they're just smoking. I mean, so cool looking. And then, you got to take a picture of one and then he's brown. Like,
my rainbow boas will do that too. I've had my rainbows all day tonight.
Rainbows will do that too.
Weren't Hog Islands just getting like really big that first Daytona trip?
They were around, so they were just tricky because there's not, like he said, no one was really focusing on just Hog Islands. A lot of people mixed them in with Colombians, and so you got a lot of what they call them, sunset boas, I think.
Sunset boas, yeah,
which is just the Hog Island mutt.
Yeah.
So I like the Hog Islands because they have that natural like freckling all over them. But I like with the larger freckles and a little cleaner background. But the problem is a lot of that happened because they mixed it in with Colombians and it cleaned up a lot of that too.
Right. That's why I like the Crawl K's though, because the Crawl K's are very reminiscent of a very heavily speckled, BCI or BI. I mean, whichever term you choose. And, but then, they're, super tiny, which is always a cool trait. A lot of people didn't get into boas when I was first getting into them because of, there's going to be this, 6, 7, 8 foot, snake. And it's like, man, I got Crawl K boas that would put a ball python to shame. I mean, my adult female Crawl K's live in CB70 tubs. I mean,
well,
room to spare.
I keep my adult Colombians in CB70 tubs because I don't grow them big. I made the mistake early on. Remember when I ordered the large package of frogs that were actually 2 snakes?
Yeah.
So I ordered two adult boas, but they came to me like UPS or whatever as live frogs written on the box.
Nice.
And when I opened it, it was supposed to be like a 5-foot female and a 4-foot male, and it was a 6-foot female and a 5-foot male. And I had them for a while, and they never did anything. They just kept getting bigger and bigger, and the male would just sit in the corner and do nothing. And then I ended up getting another male, and I finally put him with the female when he's like maybe 4 foot or so, and small, eating like medium rats, and went to town. And that's when I learned, oh yeah, they need to be small. The big fat males don't do shit.
Big fat males of some other species.
I wasn't gonna go there, but I mean,
hey, I'm one of them. I can admit it.
But yeah, that's why I always tell people when I sell boas, because that's the problem is people, the general public hears the word boa and they think like 20 foot long. I've done that with sand boas. They'll be like, we'll see sand boas on the table and they go, oh, this is boa. They get huge. I'm like, no, that's why I started taking adults with me so they can see this is an adult.
Yeah.
But even when I sell Colombians, I'm like, your males are going to get 4 to 5 foot long as long as you don't feed them like crazy. And your females really will top out at 6 as long as you don't feed them like crazy. The only big female, I had one female at 8 foot because when I got her, some dude was in the military and then he got caught with her on base and had to get rid of her. And he had obviously been power feeding her because her head was the size of like eating medium rats, but her body was the size of eating like 2x large rats. And so I was like, okay, now I got to grow this thing to be proportional. And by the time I got her proportional, she was over 8 foot long.
Right.
But I mean, I've always thought if you feed your boas right, you're talking 6 foot. There's old days of like getting on the king snake forums and seeing people's like 9 foot boas. Just it doesn't happen as much anymore.
I mean, true red tails, sure.
Yes,
I mean,
those but you should see huge fat BCIs.
Yeah, you would. I'd see it all the time. 9 foot, BCIs, and they're 50 pounds or 45 pounds or something, and it's like that thing is so obese. I mean, and it's gonna die young, and it's not gonna produce anything. I mean, if you come to my house, I mean, my animals are tiny. I mean,
Yeah.
if you compare them to, what you see in the general, forums and things like that. I mean, my adult male carpet pythons, I mean, are, yeah, they're probably 5 foot long, but I mean, they're skinny as a rail. I mean,
Yeah.
I feed them medium rats at best. I mean, usually it's a small rat. I mean, lean and mean is what you're going for most often. And even with females, yeah, you want them plump and you want them, well fed. Obviously, I feed heavy in the fall, and then I kill it during the winter. And then spring, I start to kind of warm them back up, spring and summer, or, medium, irregular feedings type of system. And yeah, they can't be huge. I mean, big fat snakes don't don't breed. They don't live long. It's people are always baffled that you got, so many of these pet reptiles that people have that, they croak after, 6 or 8 years. And it's like, these things should be living for 15, 20 years old. I mean, they're supposed to live that long, and they shouldn't be. People read maximum size in a book somewhere, which first of all, you can't go by every book that you ever read.
There's not a ton of 7 foot humans walking around. Yes, there are 7 foot humans, but it's not the average.
Yeah, we theoretically we could get that big. I mean, but people mix up maximum size with adult size, and so you have people feeding something until the boa is 6 or 7 feet long, and it's like it should take them years to get there. I mean, none of these things should be breedable size in 2.5, 3 years. I mean, realistically, and I'm guilty of it that, there's a lot of time where I get to a third year in a, something I'm raising up or a holdback or something that they're not ready to breed. They're not big enough. I mean, even by my smaller standards, I'm like, I kind of underfed that still. And that's okay. I mean, and I just give them another year, and if you feed the crap out of them, and then even if you do get them to breed, you're going to burn them out, long before they're, like boas, like I breed every other year.
Yes.
I give them an entire year off so that they can restore their fat storages and things like that. And sometimes I'll do a third year. I mean, I don't want to burn them out. I don't want to,
well, I think don't get me wrong. A lot of this happened before ball pythons, but a lot of the way the ball python hobby is being ran or has been ran for the last 15, 20 years, where people were getting snakes ready to breed at like 18 months.
18 months.
That's insane for one. And then, those people, they breed those snakes every year, which is different for an egg layer. You can do that. I mean, you probably shouldn't, but you can. But, when those guys get into boas, they don't understand the complete toll that it takes on a female who may or may not eat during pregnancy. With my boas, I can sometimes get them to take small meals during pregnancy.
Yeah, sometimes I can.
But still, like, I unfortunately just had to put down a female because she had babies and then just decided to never eat again after the babies. Like, I tried everything, and she would take rodents and wrap them and then would eat them, and she became skin and bones, and I finally had to put her down. That's the unfortunate negative thing that comes with breeding. If you're going to breed something, there's the risk of it dying in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, that's something that definitely doesn't get talked about in the reptile hobby enough, is that you're taking a great risk in breeding stuff. I've seen all kinds of stuff in the I've been breeding now for it's been almost 18 years that I've been breeding snakes. And I mean, I've had stuff get egg bound and die. I mean, I've had stuff where it's gotten egg bound and I am able to get, all the eggs out and everything's fine. I've had animals get egg bound. I get all the eggs out, everything's fine. And then the next year at some random time, not during breeding season, all of a sudden she's full of eggs and she croaks, a couple days later. I mean, her body just, screwed up. I mean, she ovulated at a weird time of year and then, died a couple days later. I mean,
I lost a Sambo to she had an infertile ovum, but it was a massive infertile that got stuck on the way out. And I finally got it out of her. And then a few days later, she couldn't take it. She died.
I had a Tarahumara female get egg bound, or I mean, I guess you still call it egg bound.
Yeah, it's still an egg, just a weird ass egg.
She for whatever reason had slugged out, and she got a couple of the slugs out. Couldn't get a bunch of them out. I was trying to palpate her, get them out. There was a couple that I just couldn't get to, and lined her up to take her to the vet, and she was dead before I ever, got her to the vet, which was just, I mean, we're talking days. Like, I mean, I've had males get killed by females. I mean, I've had, females freaking give birth to their, all their internal organs. I mean, crazy crap happens. I mean, just because we're, breeding them or whatever, like, doesn't mean that everything's going to go hunky dory. I mean, the same goes for even with the eggs. I've seen crazy crap. I mean, I hatched an egg a couple years back of a bull snake that it's the only egg of the clutch that didn't hatch. And so I cut it open, curiosity, and it was fully scaled. It was the exact shape of the egg. It was fully scaled. It had one section that was belly scales, and the rest were the dorsal scales. Had proper coloration. It had no head. It had no tail. It had no body. It was literally just the shape of the egg. It was just a oops, the something during development obviously went, vastly awry. And I still kick myself to this day for not taking a picture of it, because that was probably the craziest thing I've ever produced. I mean, but I mean, corn snakes with their brains on the wrong side of their head. I produced 3 or 4 of those. I mean,
well, I deal with a lot of albino stuff and boas, so I produce every now and then. I produce boas with messed up eyes, just because it's something that's going to happen with albino, leucism or anything.
Yeah, it just comes with the gene. I mean, there's that's probably one thing that I don't like about a lot of mutations is, which realistically, in the grand scheme of things, it's incredibly impressive that we have this many mutations that don't have catastrophic, things, because obviously in their development, genes get passed on, with other genes. They hitch a ride to, with other genes. And so, that's why you have, certain morphs, don't have dorsal striping or only have dorsal striping, or, it's like pied ball pythons, for instance, always have, some sort of coloration to their head. And then the rest of the body is where it goes, crazy with the white, because there's, these genes are, attached to each other. And so you may want to reproduce this color mutation, but that color mutation rides along with these other genes that have things to do with their bodies. And, it's why leucistic,
Texas rats
have, big bulgy eyes, or
people kept breeding for that. I'm like, can we stop that? I mean,
or like
try
super jaguar carpet pythons. They're dead leucistic animals.
I had a jag once and I got rid of it because I was like, I can't keep doing that. It just whenever I got excited or it was time to eat, it was really noticeable. And like, I'm never going to breed this. I can't be responsible for this.
I've never owned a jag. That's one mutation that I won't touch.
They're pretty.
Yeah, they're gorgeous snakes. I mean, but I stay away from, things that have kind of severely chronic, issues like that. Because it's just, for me, every mutation is just a cool secondary color that my favorite snake comes in.
Yeah.
And so if it comes with a bunch of chronic problems, I don't want it. I could get rid of every single mutation in my room, or rooms, right now, and I would be perfectly fine, and I would still have all the species that I work with. I like the species, or the locality, and not the mutation. Don't get me wrong, the mutations are super cool, and I love playing mad scientists with, producing double and triple gene stuff, and but it's not why I like the species. And so, yeah, I tend to stay away from stuff that has, real chronic issues like that. That was something that albino boas, bothered me. I didn't like that some of them were born without their eyes, and
Yeah.
or they have eyes, and then all of a sudden, like, halfway through, a few months after birth, all of a sudden, like, one eyeball's falling out, and like,
Or a day after, which is what I had this past year.
Yeah, I've seen all kinds of. I've got a lot of buddies that breed, a lot of that stuff, and they're cool. I mean, but yeah, I tried to stay away from.
What gets me is the folks that think they can breed certain things out. Like, you'll see folks who think they can breed.
They've got the magical recipe.
Yeah, they can breed the specialness out of spider balls, or they can breed it out of jag carpets, or they can breed super motley boas that'll survive. I'm like,
spiders and jags are the same. They're the same mutation found in two different python species. They're the exact same.
And it does. I will admit, it does come on a scale. The how effective they are is definitely on a scale.
Sure.
But people are like, well, mine doesn't do it. I'm like, well, it doesn't do it to the extent that others do it. Yeah, like, get it warm, or let it go to feed, or let it get it excited, and these things start to show up a little more. And then with people that do like motley boas, I can't stand folks that will breed motley to motley. I'm like, this thing is going to die at like 2 years old, and even if it does live a long time, it's not going to be the healthiest boa. There are other ways to get a solid black boa without doing this.
They're awful. I mean, I've seen some, like, I breed Argentines, and motley is a gene that's found in Argentines as well. Same mutation, just found in two different subspecies of boa constrictor. And it's the gene.
Yeah.
Whatever that gene is piggybacking with, that, has to do with the actual body, the actual organism of the snake, is detrimental to it, and it just doesn't do well. And they look like hell, and they die at 4 or 5 years old. I mean, or earlier. I mean, I just, like I said, mutations to me are a cool, secondary color or pattern that my favorite snake comes in. And I stay away from the stuff that's, super. I mean, I've got like super zebras, the jungle carpets.
With the tail issue.
I hate that their tail is, messed up. Like,
for those that don't know, it cut like a little club tail, like it's curled, and sometimes you can cut it off. And
well, they have like a kink at some point of their tail, and so some of them don't have it. Most of them do. Lots of them you gotta like snip, and it'll heal, and then they just have like a nubby tail, because if you don't, they'll end up shedding, and having stuck shed on it.
Yeah,
it'll end up killing off the tail anyway, and so it's just easier to snip it off at birth. I mean,
but you can be the person that breeds it out of it. Go for it. You can be the one that does it.
It's not happening. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like I said, I appreciate that we have a lot of mutations that don't have a lot of horrible chronic issues. I mean, but I find that even in bull snakes, I like doing the multi combo thing, because if you start going down that one path with, trying to produce a lot of that one mutation. It seems like the more genes that, the more hets or more visual things that you have in some of these snakes, the fecundity of the babies just kind of falls off. I mean, my strongest clutches that are the biggest and, want to eat really well and do really phenomenal and take off, with the shot real fast are like het to het breedings.
Yeah.
And when I'm breeding mutation to mutation, I can have a range of sizes in babies that are so much smaller than these, hets over here. It's like, these were born 3 weeks ago and these are born today. And this thing is 3 times the size of this thing. Now, some of that has to do with locality. A lot of mutations have a lot of different localities in them and stuff. And that's what kind of makes it fun, is that, no two albino bull snakes look identical necessarily, because if you got one from this, this breeder, he used, these localities, or, this one used those localities. And so there's a lot of variation, which is fun. But if you start breeding bull snakes together that, are related, that's another thing that I try and avoid with coolibrids is I try not to breed stuff that's directly related to one another. I'll do that a lot more with pythons and boas than I will with coolibrids. It seems to crash faster if you're breeding related animals. Brother and siblings. I mean,
I would imagine with animals that are smaller populations or island populations, they could probably do better with inbreeding versus animals that aren't, just because naturally they have had to inbreed because of the small population numbers.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you got a lot of these boas and pythons that, their entire lives, can span, 5 or 6 miles. You think about a carpet python, they don't travel a lot. This is a very, or blood pythons, this is an incredibly sedentary animal. They're going to find a good hiding spot and they're going to sit there. In fact, blood pythons won't even crap for months on end, so that they don't ruin their good hiding spot. I mean, they've developed incredible metabolisms to break down, all of that stuff and sit there so they don't have to move. Well, what is the likelihood that a blood python is born in this area? It actually survives to adulthood, to be breedable size. And what is the likelihood that it runs into something that it is relative to? Pretty damn high.
Pretty good. Yeah.
I mean, the likelihood of them running into something that's, maybe, it's, second cousin, or, it's same father, different mother, or, you know what I mean? Like it.
Yeah, because your colubrids are way more active. Just in general, they're way more active. They're going to travel far more. I mean, you look at something like an indigo, which travels like miles.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's going to make sense. So,
which makes perfect sense, because then you breed 2 indigos that are related, and guess what? It starts having problems real fast.
Yeah, because they have not worked those issues out of the population because they don't have to.
They don't have to. That animal travels too much. Bull snakes are very similar. They their span of travel. A male can travel miles in a day. I mean, if he's really moving and grooving. And they just don't do well when you start, and then which is, bad when it comes to morphs, because all of their genes are recessive. And so, I mean, it promotes inbreeding, to be successful, and even not just with a single gene, but you think about with bull snakes, the first morph clutch that was produced by Trumbauer, had albino, hypo, and white-sided in the same clutch. All 3 of those genes are freaking related. I mean, how many of those animals that you look at that have probably all can be traced back to that one, one clutch. I mean, probably a lot. I mean, and so we're not just talking about, breeding albinos to white-sideds or, or albinos to albinos. I mean, you're even, some of those mutations are all from the same clutch. I mean,
well, and we're a hobby that tends to sell things in pairs, right? People will say, I'll sell you a male and a female. Well, the odds are that male and female came from the same clutch of litter because you're breeding them. And so we have a tendency to keep doing that over and over in the hobby, whereas people really should buy a male here and then go search for a female from someone else, even across the country. Now you can just get on Morph Market, find someone across the country with what you're looking for, and it's a better chance of a better bloodline and better genetics once you start mixing them together.
Stronger stuff. Yeah. I mean, and that's where it gets dicey. I mean, unfortunately, there's a lot of this stuff, at least the stuff that I work with, not a lot of people are producing them. I mean, and you may not have any other option. I mean, I breed Rockhamptons, the Rockhampton Coastals. All Rockhamptons in the entire world can be traced back to one pair. That's it.
Yeah, if it's Australia and you're screwed, everything's related.
They're related. Yeah, I mean, everything's related. There's no getting away from that. Some of the locality boas, are kind of the same deal. They can all be traced back to, a couple pairs. And so.
Well, it's tricky, especially with something like you're dealing when you have talk about Mac lots or some of the Liasis, where in this time and age, they've pretty much disappeared from the hobby except for a few people, right? Because when I first got in the hobby, you could find, oddly enough, Mac lots in a pet store for super cheap.
Yeah, $50-$60.
Yeah, and then everybody went ball python route, and those became popular, and some of those other fringe animals like that kind of fell off.
Disappeared.
So there were only a handful of people breeding them, and so those are the ones we have to go from, especially when it's something. If you're dealing with anything that's Australian related, whatever we have is what we have. Unless you can find some of the ones that are Indo, also some of the green tree stuff that you kind of find in Indo as well. But it's a shame.
Or you get bloodlines from UK.
Yeah,
that's been one kind of avenue that we've been able to take. Is we've been able to import some different bloodlines and things from the UK that were unrelated to the stuff that we had here in the US, which was nice. But yeah, I mean, you don't have, and unfortunately, we had a lot of cool stuff that we ruined because nobody was paying attention. Maclots are a perfect example of that. We probably had, a multitude of bloodlines. We were getting wild caught stuff there for a while, so we could have had a lot of different bloodlines if people were paying attention, but they couldn't be bothered, with them. And so, now you've got to scour the countryside because there's 5 people that produce, Maclots pythons in the U.S. I mean,
well, then it gets tricky because they don't come in a ton of colors, right? For in general, them and Savus are a dirt colored python that historically was very bitey, and so that was one reason they kind of got passed on by. And so now you got to not only find people that are breeding them, but people have to start putting time into them to get them to look certain ways, and maybe you start getting them to look a little cleaner like this, or because you don't have all the morphs,
right?
Not that you need them, but that's how, unfortunately, in the hobby, that's how things become more popular, is if there's more options.
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, but it's crazy because people spend, countless amounts of money to have this, ball python that's patternless. I mean, with a few freckles, and then it's we have a whole species that looks like this naturally.
That's what kills me with diamond
they don't
python.
glow in the dark. I get it. I mean, that's true. I mean, but Maclots, I think, are super cool looking. They tend to either be dark with light spots or light with dark spots. I think that's fascinating. And they've, historically, they can be bitey as babies, but they grow out of that pretty quick, just as much as a carpet python or, a lot of other stuff that, have been historically bitey. A lot of that is we were getting wild stuff, and blood pythons are a great example of that. When we were just getting wild caught blood pythons, yeah, they were assholes. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
But I've gotten a bunch of those wild caught blood pythons, and they've been in music videos, kids' birthday parties. I have a wild caught blood python. I got him in, '09, I think. Maybe it was even earlier than that. It might have been '07. But anyway, he was like sub-adult, 3.5, 4 feet already. His eye is all messed up. He was attacked by something in the wild, because when you look down at him, like, he should be like this, and he's just missing this whole like chunk. His face like curves.
Jeez.
Because he's missing a part of his face. His upper lip even like upturns, like you see his teeth a little bit. We call him Scarface. He was jacked up by something, and he was mean as all get out. I mean, I remember taking him home from a show, and he's biting me through the bag. Like, I get him home, he's just a mess. I mean, trying to bite you, flailing around, pissing everywhere. And I worked with him, and I worked with him, and I worked with him. I mean, and that snake you could do anything to, and he's going to be fine. He has been to countless birthday parties. He's been in a music video or two. He's been to, classrooms and stuff, wrapped around little kids' necks. My daughter, when she was 4 or 5, would help him peel if he didn't have like a good shed. She'd put him in her lap, and she'd sit there and just gently pick at him and get all of his, few remnants of stuck shed off. I mean, he wouldn't hurt a fly. I mean, you just have to work with them. People are afraid that they're going to bite or something, and people just need to get over that. Anything with a mouth can bite.
That's true. So talking about things that historically are bitey, or at least perceived that way, let's talk a little more about bull snakes. Where, as a snake nut, because they historically are ill-tempered, but I mean, they're really mostly bluff. At least that's what a lot of them I've seen. It's a lot of bluff.
Yeah, it's all a show. They're rattlesnake mimics, and so they naturally want to do the big S posture. They want to hiss. They want to rattle their tail. They want to make this big show so that you leave them alone. Not people, just predators. I mean, and so historically, people are, have always been kind of weary of them, because they're a pretty big, impressive colubrid that, makes this big stink and stuff. And but realistically, I've been headbutted a lot more than I've ever been bit.
Yeah.
They usually kind of like hit you, because they're trying to, fake strike. They're faking you out. I mean, they want you to leave them alone so that they have an opportunity to turn tail and run. And so, you back them into a corner, they're going to be, aggressive or defensive, but I mean, in all the bull snakes that I've raised, I think I have 3 that are adults that will still act like that.
Have you had other pits? Like, have you done pines or gophers, or are you just stuck with bulls?
I've always only stuck with bulls. When I lived in California, I caught a lot of gophers, wild caught gophers, not to keep, but just while I was out herping and stuff. I have I purposely, knowing myself and, how I wanted to dive down the rabbit hole with all the mutations and all the different localities that bull snakes, offer, I purposely did not get into gophers or pines. And so I've only ever kept bulls. And that was just more of keep my safe sand, because I would go down the rabbit hole, and then I've got to have, all the different localities of pines. I got to have all the mutations. I got to have, all this different stuff. And so bull snakes, I have to, keep it just to that. It's just like blood pythons I'm the same way. I have blood pythons, morphs and some locality stuff. And then I have the pumpkin heads, and like, that's it. Like, I don't work with Borneos. I won't have blacks or anything of the Sumatran, silvers or anything like that. Like, I'll go down every rabbit hole, and I know my reptile room is only so big. I can't.
So with bulls, where would you put them as a pet? Like, so you have corns, and obviously as far as colubrids go, those are kind of like the standard for if someone wants to get into snakes.
Corn snake is the best first pet ever. Period.
Now, my only caveat for that is a year-old corn snake is the best pet ever, because God, baby corn snakes are a pain in the ass because they can get out of everything, and they're not the best for first time, like putting it in a glass tank.
That's true.
But at a year-old and on, I agree, it is an amazing pet. Where would you put bull snakes on that? How close?
They're definitely more advanced. You're gonna get more of that defensive reaction.
Yeah.
You're definitely going to get, the open the cage and they come flying out with their mouth open, looking for food. So they definitely are a little, and obviously because of their size, 4, 5, 6 foot, snake is, fairly impressive, that can take down medium rats, with ease. They're definitely not, way down at the bottom like a corn snake. But
would you put them in the same boat as like a boa?
I think they're easier. I mean,
yeah,
a boa, you might screw up their humidity requirements. You might feed them too much, and they have regurgitation issues. I've seen a lot more problems with boa keeping, and bull snakes are damn near bulletproof. They don't require any humidity, or very little. I've kept them on aspen, for years and years and years, and never had any issues with shedding issues or anything like that. You get the occasional one that just seems to dehydrate itself, and I have to keep them on coconut husk to, or cypress mulch to give it enough humidity because it's too stupid to drink enough water. They grow out of that, you know what I mean? But yeah, they don't require a lot of water. They're in fact easier than corn snakes in that regard, as corn snakes require a lot of clean water. Where corn snakes naturally are found, it rains all the damn time. And so they're pretty used to getting fresh water. And you can dehydrate a corn snake to death, just like a blood python, pretty quick. They require a lot of water. Bull snakes, if it tips over its water dish and it doesn't have water for 2 weeks, it could care less. Like, they're very easy in that regard.
Because like we've talked in here before, there are people that are okay with it, not okay with using the word like beginner snakes. And it's kind of tricky saying beginner reptiles because sometimes, so my first snake that was my snake was a horrible beginner snake. My first one was a Brazilian rainbow boa. That's a horrible.
That is horrible.
We went to a reptile expo. The guy talked me into it because it was super pretty, and I was like, I want it. And we should have killed it about 700 different times, but he lived to be like 17, 18 years old. And then he finally passed.
I don't know that he talked you into it, but he had plenty of opportunity to talk you out of it.
He did not talk me out of it.
Yeah.
So I would put that on a list of maybe you should not start with that. But people start with corn snakes, they start with ball pythons, and then there's this natural progression where a lot of people will, well, I want something bigger. And unfortunately, as people go, I've got a ball python, I want a retic. I'm like, well, that may not be the jump you need to make. That's a big jump. But I think bull snakes don't get enough appreciation as probably being that really good intermediate, because it's a big snake. When they're full grown, it's a thick, muscular snake. It's not retic or berm, but I mean, for what we have, it's a good snake. And so I just was wondering your thoughts on it as someone who's wanting to step up to something maybe a little more challenging, but still with a lot of wiggle room.
I've sold people their first snake as a bull snake. I think people with the right research can definitely make a bull snake be their first. I don't love that it's, the first, like you mentioned, corn snake is certainly probably a better first, but yeah, absolutely. I think bull snakes, especially at their baby age, are big bluffers. They're really more gonna, there's a lot more bark than there is bite. I could probably count, on one hand how many times I've been bitten by an adult or even a sub-adult bull snake. If when it comes down to feeding time that they're going to come flying out at you, and you've got a little bit of tongue, you're not going to get bit by. I mean, a lot of the babies are super bluffy, and they'll sit there in your hand and, bluff strike you. Maybe they bite you, but their teeth are so damn small that they're not even going to break your skin.
They do start at a better size. We're talking about the baby size of corn snakes. Bull snakes do start at a better, if you're going to get a baby.
Oh, yeah. I've never had a problem like throwing in a frozen thawed, like fuzzy mouse and throw it in their cage and move on, and they eat every time. I mean, I've never had a bull snake starve themselves to death. They're that perfect size where you can, they're definitely a little bulkier, a little huskier, a little more,
less likely to get out of that 10-gallon. Well, less likely to get out of that 10-gallon tank. Someone's going to put them in for the first time.
Right. And so, if you know what you're getting into going into it, I think that they're definitely a good, first choice or at very least second choice, as far as, like I said, I think they're easier than a boa. Because even a boa baby, can potentially be more nippy, or defensive than a bull snake. Because, like I said, the bull snake's more of a bluff. The boa will bite you. I mean, they're at least they can be, far more, troublesome.
But, I've got a rack full of babies right now that they're not bluffing when they strike at me.
Yeah, no, they'll get you. I mean, yeah. And so I think bull snakes are definitely, way up there in a species that is easy to keep. They're easy to be. That's what I love about corn snakes and bull snake is they're interesting.
They come in the colors and patterns too. The things that people get.
Yeah, they come in 100 different colors. Whatever your fancy is. I mean, usually my table, I've got, all these different colors and stuff. And so it's like, well, if you want the one that's going to look like a rattlesnake that you can play with, you get this one. And then you want the hypo, and then, there's 2 different types of hypo. And so, you can play with that. And then, there's, granted, Stillwater is not really a hypo, but I'll leave my soapbox on that short. But there's 2 different types of hypo. There's 2 different types of exanthic. I mean,
they've got keeled scales, so they feel different than if you're used to something smooth like a ball python or a corn snake. It feels completely different, and it's going to be and as muscular as they are full grown. I mean, you're talking like 7 foot full grown, all muscle. It's a very impressive snake if you want to show somebody. I mean, let's face it. People that don't know snakes see a sambo, adult sambo, and go, "That's a huge snake." So you show them a 7 foot bull snake, especially if you've been handling it up to that point. it's a puppy dog 7-foot bull snake, and it's going to be a really impressive snake.
Oh, incredibly impressive, and display well. I mean, they're not a hider, for the most part. You set them up in a cool, big display. It's going to be out. It's going to be exploring. It's going to be a big, impressive animal. And yeah, if you've handled it a lot, by the time it gets to be big enough to actually hurt when it bites you, it's not going to bite you anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking the stuff that I've raised. I've raised a lot of bull snakes, and a lot of the time, I mean, I have hundreds of snakes. A lot of the activity that a lot of my animals get is moving from one cage to another so I can clean the first cage. And a lot of that even is with a hook, because I don't have time to get bit and, potentially, hurt its mouth or, have some sort of infection or whatever. I've got hundreds of snakes to clean. And so, I'm hooking from, one cage to another, and then I'm cleaning out the tub or the cage, and then I'm putting them back. I mean, and there's a lot of stuff that gets to be adult size that its only interaction with a human being has been moving from, with a hook from one location to the next, or maybe I'm tailing them or something. I mean, and they still, out of all of those animals, still get, I still only have 2 or 3 that I wouldn't walk down there and trust to toss into it, somebody, who didn't know what they were doing's hands. I mean,
Yeah,
that's impressive. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, you know what I mean? So yeah, I think bull snakes are definitely one that, and they've been gaining popularity because of the mutations and stuff. They've definitely gained a ton of popularity in the time that I've been working with them. I think I used to sell albino bull snakes for like, $125 or something. Like,
that was the price for a lot of stuff for a long time.
Oh yeah,
120, because rainbow bows were $125 for like 20 years.
Yeah,
and then someone said, "You know what? They're $500." I'm like,
$500.
Okay, it's a weird time, but they jumped up.
Well, at one point, I think, I don't know, it was 2 or 3 years ago. I mean, I had gone up. I had taken my bull snakes cost up every year, every mutation. I mean, even wild, the normal, wild types, I took them up more money every year for years. I mean, I've produced them now for, I don't know, 10 years or something. Like, they went up every year. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't even keep up with it. There was, I was selling stuff and then I was going, man, I'm wiping out of stuff in 3 months. I can't believe I'm selling through all these bull snakes. And then, I tried my best to look at the market, but some of the stuff you don't see very often. And so, it's hard to, keep a pulse on all of this stuff. And, and then I would try and buy something that would maybe be unrelated to, to my stock. And they're like, oh, it's $500. And I was like, God bless. I sold that 20 of them just like it, for, $350. Like, and they're like, well, this is what, we're selling them for. And
I tell you, I think Snake Discovery helps you out a lot with that one too.
Emily's good people. I like her.
And Emily shows a lot of bull snakes on her channel, and they drive a lot of first-time snake people into buying snakes. And so
Emily's awesome. She's reached out to me a lot with, like, when she was getting into bull snakes. She reached out quite a bit, asking questions and stuff. And she's good. Her and her husband are good people.
Yeah.
But yeah, they show a lot of. I've shown them on Triple B TV quite a bit. They've definitely grown in popularity. They're cool snakes, man. I mean, they're rattlesnakes you can play with that come in 100 colors. I mean,
Timothy wants to know if you have kankakis.
I do.
I'll say, I imagine with all you have, I would imagine you probably have them.
Yeah,
a fairly common one.
The localities I work with right now are Kankakees and Kingsvilles. I have true Kingsville Reds from the John Gitcher bloodline. Not a whole lot. You can not a whole lot of people can actually say that. Kingsville kind of turned into it's just a red bull snake. But I have the true locality stuff there, and they're
like
massive. They're massive bull snakes.
Who doesn't do that with Okatee corns? They'll go, if it looks a certain way, they go, is it Okatee corn? I'm like, very few of them actually trace back to like Okatee where they came from.
Yeah. Well, like I have a lot of the extreme Okatee stuff, which is not pure Okatee.
Yeah.
And I like it. It's cool. I honestly kind of hate that I don't have any locality corn stuff. But I have a lot of, as far as the corns go, I have a lot of the stuff that I really like. I have extreme Okatee. I have some reverse stuff. That's I have some fluorescent stuff, which is kind of Okatee based. It's selectively bred. Reverses for that like kind of fluorescent coloring.
Yeah.
I like a lot of the Okatee stuff. I will eventually get me some genuine Okatee stuff, some red Zeppelins. I like the Okatees, so yeah. And then like I have some Miami stuff.
I never had Miami, but I do like the grays and some of the Miami stuff.
I love that. I have a pair of Miami Tessuras.
Yeah.
And I think that they're just fantastic. They have that, that beautiful Miami gray, but then they have that real stark, fire engine red. And then the Tessura is just a cool incomplete dominant that, just gives them a whole different look. So yeah, I like a lot of that stuff, but
yeah. So back to bull snakes. Everybody should get bull snakes. Is what
everyone should be. Everyone. Yeah. If you don't have bull snakes, you're doing it wrong.
Shit.
Yeah. Your collection sucks. Like I said, I've got a pair of Louisiana pines. It's the closest I get. I just like Louisiana pines because of their natural history and because of they're endangered. And I lived in the area where they were from for a while. And one of these days I'm going to breed them just because I want to get the giant ass eggs that come from Louisiana pines.
Do you have any problems with? Y'all are in Louisiana, correct?
We're in Texas now. We used to live in Central Louisiana.
Do you have? So you don't have any problems with, keeping stuff that's locale. As far as
like legality issues
stuff.
So I had wildlife fisheries show up at my house once.
You can stop if we.
No.
We're getting into dangerous territory.
I told it on here before. It was for selling a carpet python. Yeah. Apparently, when I moved there, you didn't need a license. But after I moved there, they changed the law. You needed a license to sell carpet pythons. And I had sold one to a guy in Louisiana. He lived in Texas. He apparently somehow sold that to someone else in Texas. That person apparently got busted for drugs or something. They somehow traced that snake back to me in Louisiana and came to my house expecting to probably find just a bunch of shit in my house and drugs and guns. And they came into my snake room where everything was in nice tubs and racks. And I ran them through everything. And I said, look, of all the stuff in here, I opened the drawer, said, here's a Louisiana pine snake. And then they knew exactly who I got it from because there's like one guy in Louisiana that breeds them. I said, yeah, I got it from him. They're like, yeah, you're good. And I was like, all right. And then when I moved to Texas, we reached out before we moved here because we're moving across state lines and because they're protected. So look, I've got a pair of these. Am I good? He says, as long as you can prove where you got them from, you're good. I'm like, all right. Because basically, I didn't get them out of the wild because you can't fucking get them out of the wild because they only find like 2 a year, and it wasn't these 2. So, but yeah, so that was not the issue. My biggest issue I've ever had legality wise was a carpet python.
I was visiting men too.
Yeah.
And all I could think was, shit, my damn snake freak son? And what has he done? You know, because I'm a dad. That's what you think.
Yeah.
But,
Nobody wants
the
law
carpet.
enforcement knocking on the door.
yeah, that's never a good thing.
And those guys, it was one, they didn't know anything about reptiles. They're having to enforce a law on animals they know nothing about. So like I'm having to show them stuff, and I was like, well, these are sand boas. They go, those are boas, like boa constrictors. I was like, no, they're sand boas. But then I was like, but these over here are boa constrictors, because those were also on the list of things you have to have a permit to sell in Louisiana. But I was like, these are also boas. They're legal to own, and none of them are over, because they have an 8-foot law. It has to, if it's over 8 foot, you have to have a permit. Which I had one snake. Like I said, I had that one boa at one point that was over 8, and I contacted the state when they came with that law, because that law was originally written for 6 foot, which would have made like rat snakes and rainbow boas illegal without a permit. And they changed it to 8 foot. And I called him and said, look, I've got this boa that is a little over 8 foot. Do I need a permit? And the guy said, look, if we walk in and have to wonder if it's over 8 foot, you don't need a permit. If we walk in and go, yeah, but it's over 8 foot, you need a permit. Like, okay, we're good then. I don't have berms. I don't have retics, which is what that law was also so weird. So you'll appreciate this one. On there, they had they had berms, they had the different species of anacondas, they had boas, they had carpets, all of Morelia. All of Morelia was on the written in that law. And then they also had what's the python? Not pop. What are pop ones now called? Our earring giants are called pop. So they're the pop one python, not the earring giant, but the pop. So the big one, not that one, but there's the other one, the pop one python, which isn't the pop one carpet.
Oh, the pop one python, which is the other olive python.
Yeah, they had that. They had that on the list, and I was like, what? Y'all just Googled snakes over 8 foot. Like, there's no reason. Yeah. Like 4 people at the time own that species. I was like, there's no reason for that to even be on this list. They just Googled snakes over 8 foot and went, yep, here we go.
Yeah.
So
anyone that somewhere in a book it says that this thing gets over 8 feet. That's funny.
Well, because they start putting like anaconda species we don't even own in the United States, like subspecies like no one has. I'm like, stop that. Just And so these guys were having a look at my snake, I'm showing them everything, and they have no idea what they're looking at.
They, a lot of them don't know. I mean, I thought that was super interesting. It had a lot to do with when we moved. I mean, I'm originally from Arizona, but I spent most of my life growing up in California. It's where my kids were born and stuff like that. And then we moved to Arizona for a short period of time, and then we ended up moving to now we live in Clarksville, Tennessee. But it played a big role in, we wanted to get out of California. We couldn't afford to, stay there and stuff. And so, and I played around with a lot of different states, Texas being one of them, Colorado, Tennessee, Florida. There was a couple different, states out there that, we played a lot, with, and reptile laws were something that I, hyper focused on.
Y'all have big snake laws in Tennessee.
Believe it or not, there's almost nothing out here.
The only ones I knew about, because we knew a guy that lived in Tennessee, right? And he had big snakes. And then he moved to Alabama, and he could finally tell people about his big snakes.
Correct.
Because he had anacondas and retics, and he had hots.
Yeah.
And I
don't know of any large species handicaps that the reptile industry has here in Tennessee. One thing is there's no venomous.
Yeah.
And so even rear fanged venomous is a no-go.
Do they count hog noses?
Hog nosers don't count for some reason. They're actually one of the most popular thing you'll find at a Tennessee Reptile Expo, which baffles my mind. But because I've seen hognose bites be pretty bad.
I've seen one that was gross, just had pus-filled boils all up and down their arm.
Yeah, so I used to work with rear fang stuff when I years ago. I had false water cobras, I had Madagascar giant hogs, I had some Malaysian
mad hogs are cool.
Mangrove snakes. I had some different rear fang stuff, and I got rid of most of it along with. I had some big constrictors too and stuff, and I didn't want anything. I didn't want any problems with my kids.
Yeah.
I had a fairly close enough encounter with a 20-foot, 350-pound berm at the zoo that I worked at. That I was like, yeah, this doesn't need to be in my house. You know, I almost got nailed in the face by a 350-pound, 20-foot berm.
That would suck.
And it was, and I've got some friends that keep big stuff, and that's, they're super cool, and I don't poo-poo it at all. They're not for me. I like stuff that, I can handle by myself. My olive python female is the biggest snake that I deal with. My big Argentine boa females, are plenty of snake for me. I don't need anything bigger than that. Also, from a business perspective, me personally, I just don't want to sell anything that is going to get monstrous and and hurt somebody maybe. And that was kind of the same deal with the rear fang stuff. I think they're super fascinating animals, but they're not for me. I've got little kids. Well, my kids aren't little anymore; they're teenagers. But I got kids. I didn't want anything, dealing with that. But as far as laws go, like I couldn't move to Colorado because you couldn't have Pitophis.
Because you can't have native stuff there, right? Like if it's
and Pitophis is bull snakes are native, and so you couldn't have bulls at Colorado at all. I actually talked to Fish and Game and in Colorado, and they were like, "Yeah, we don't give a shit if you can prove that they were all born in captivity and you bought them." From some breeder in California, it didn't matter to them. It was native and you couldn't have it. And so that was a quick, check off the box. Okay, we can't move here. I mean, Florida, it seemed like it had too many reptile laws.
Yeah.
I didn't want a permit for everything that I own. I thought that was kind of crazy. Tennessee, we have a lot of family here in Tennessee, or my wife does. And so that was a part of the reason. But then their reptile laws, the only thing I've had to do is I had to have an import license to bring in my eastern box turtle. I have an eastern box turtle that I rescued freaking, 20 years ago. It probably wasn't that long, but it's been at least 10 years that I've had her. I had to have a permit to bring her in. My corn snakes, because they are native, I had to have a permit to bring them in. If I buy any more corn snakes, I have to pay for a permit to bring them in. But it was a cheap permit. I mean, it wasn't like I was spending. I think I paid $30 or $40, and I was able to list out every corn snake and my eastern box turtle on one permit, and that was it. And I could have paid a little bit more and, added whatever corn snake. I mean, I could have bought a corn snake a month and just added it to the list and it would have been fine. And so I thought that was pretty easy. And if I breed anything that's native, so the corn snake or the eastern box turtle, I have to pay it's like a $350 reproduction fee or whatever that, which realistically with most of the morphs that I work with in corn snakes, I sell like 3 babies and I'm covered. So, and if I sell within the state, I just have to have a receipt that, hey, they bought it from me.
The most I have, worry I'd have now is I've got a Chinese alligator at my house, which is technically owned by a zoo. So it's their Chinese alligator. So if they were show up, I'd have to go look. I know it's protected at CITES, but it's not mine. It's there, so I'm covered under his permit.
That's cool.
And then the Louisiana pines. Everything else is is fine. And then Louisiana pines, I mean, they can't find any in Texas. So, I mean, they're pretty much extinct in Texas now. So,
See, pines are native here. And so I would actually have to have a special permit to have any type of pine.
y'all have northern pines down in Tennessee?
I can't confirm that because I haven't got one, but yeah. Well, so I'm right on the Kentucky border, so I have Kentucky pines.
I live not too far from, well, relatively not too far from you. I'm in Alabama, over by almost to Chattanooga. But we come through your area a good bit going up through Kentucky.
I just drove through your area. We went down to Pensacola last week for spring break for the kiddos. Drove right through. We came through Mobile and then through Birmingham and
I'm up, up north. I'm literally right on the Tennessee-Alabama line there.
Right on.
Yeah,
I go to Chattanooga all the time. Chattanooga is where my company's corporate office is, and so
I'm 40 minutes at the most from Chattanooga.
Nice.
So
they have an amazing. Have you ever been to the aquarium there?
No, not yet. I keep telling myself I'm going to go, and I haven't.
It's one of the best aquariums I've ever been to. It's two buildings. Like they have a saltwater building and a freshwater building.
Yeah.
And so you do one. You start at the top of each of them and work your way down. But it's an awesome aquarium. You should definitely go by it.
I'm definitely. It's on my short list of ones to check out for sure. That one, and I got to get out to Atlanta, Georgia.
I want to go so bad to see the whale sharks.
I got to go see some whale shark, man. That's
I used to
sharks. Yeah, that's.
I used to work at a zoo in Louisiana, and we had one of our team volunteers when she grew up, and she was at college. She ended up interning at the Atlanta Aquarium, so she sent us like videos of her swimming with whale sharks.
That's awesome. Sharks have always been one that were just so fascinating to me. I was fortunate enough when I was younger, when I was thinking about getting into marine biology and stuff. We had, I did a lot of like animal training with dolphins and stuff, and encountering sharks and stuff were pretty normal, and they're just such a cool. They're like snakes or reptiles, you know what I mean? It's like they're super misunderstood, super cool animals. They're rad. I still never forget my where I lived in California. We went to the Monterey Bay Aquarium all the time, which is a super cool aquarium if you ever get out there. And they have a open, I think it's deep water or open water is the exhibit name, but it's this huge enclosure where they have a whole school of like 350-pound tuna, thousands of sardines, 2 or 3 like 7-foot hammerhead sharks, some big like 350-pound green sea turtles or loggerhead turtles. I couldn't remember which, but my daughter, when she was younger, had like a Girl Scout trip out there, and we were able to sleep in
we
that room.
Camp. Yeah, that's always cool.
Wow.
I had my feet up against the glass of that enclosure, and got to, I couldn't sleep for shit. I mean, I was just sitting there watching sharks go by and stuff, and I was like, dude, this is just incredible. I mean, I was kind of worried about going to sleep because I thought if I wake up and all I see is water, sharks, sardines, I might for a moment not remember where I am. But yeah, absolutely.
So we got all this way, and I forgot to go over our question for the week. So let's do that real quick.
Yeah.
I asked you for the question. I said it was, how has reptile keeping shaped your life? So I'm gonna read their answers, and we'll go over some of our listener answers, and then I'll ask you the question. But it was, again, how has reptile keeping shaped your life? Oh no, we lost him right when we got to his question. Hopefully he'll log back in, and we'll be good. I feel bad going over the question now. It was his question. But anywho, Oh, there we go. He's back.
For some reason.
There we go.
I don't know why I got kicked out, but
that was weird.
Yeah.
So again, the question was, how is reptile keeping shaped your life? And let's see. Christina Lynn Peters said it's her escape from her problems, which I've heard a lot of people. It's their escape from other things. Our friend Amanda Reddy from Reddy's Rainforest says, always learning about nutrition. We're firm believers in nutrition being a big part of our chameleons' lives, which makes us think harder about what we eat. I don't think at all about what I eat compared to the reptile. I'm going to eat pizza. I'm not going to think about that. Todd Autry said it has helped my reflexes stay sharp. Also, networking with others has brought about some good stuff. Our buddy Jack from the Netherlands says it's definitely a relaxing part of my day. I enjoy taking care of them and spending time in the reptile room. And JD McLean says it helps me focus my ADHD. It would make me go crazy, I think, if I had ADHD. I'd never get cages cleaned. I would just keep going to a new snake in the snake room. So how do you feel it's helped shape your life, Travis?
It's done a lot of things. I mean, it's chosen, or it's helped choose, where I lived, because obviously, I, like we discussed, I mean, I couldn't move to this state because of this, or I couldn't move to that state because of that. It definitely has shaped those things. It shaped what house I lived in. I, have to have a certain size house to accommodate, all of these things. I also have, 2 kids that, a boy and a girl, so we couldn't share rooms. I mean, so it's like, I had to have something with a basement, or I had to have something with a 4th bedroom. That's, it's been something that's super important. It's shaped, even, meeting my wife. We met when we were 17 years old. We had mutual friends. And so next month we'll have been together 19 years. She wouldn't come into my house when we first met. I'd actually already moved out. I graduated early and I was living on my own. And so, I was already working at the reptile shop and at the reptile zoo. And so my house was just a reptile zoo. I mean, I had a berm, I had a retic, I had, actually, I think I had 2 retics at the time. I had Dumerals boas, I had red tails, BCIs, I had blood pythons. I mean, there was, in every nook and corner of that house, in the kitchen, the living room, the bedroom, there was snakes, there was spiders. I had a fairly large collection of tarantulas at one point, or 15, 16 species. She came over. She was some mutual friends, and she wouldn't come into the house. She was standing out front, and she's like, "No, I'm not coming in there." And it took me about 45 minutes to convince her to come into the house with the rest of the people. And then I spared no time and dropped in like a 5-foot Dumerals boa in her lap. Well, it was kind of a prerequisite at that point in my life. It was like, hey, if you're not going to be into these things, like, not that I had no idea that we were going to date. I just thought she was cute. You know what I mean? It was, hey, you're going to like snakes, or that's, a deal breaker. She's, warmed up to them, obviously, and she has her own, reptiles now. And, it's everything about my life. It's, it's changed or consumed or affected in one way or another. And all, I think, for very positive things. I mean, my kids grew up not afraid of reptiles, and, which I think is hysterical, because, a lot of their friends, go are shocked and amazed that they're like, "Oh, how many pets do you have at your house?" And, "Oh, like I have 2 dogs," or, "Oh, I have a cat, 2 cats and a dog," and or sometimes they're like looking for some arbitrary number, and it's like 2, 1, 3, like and like get to my daughter, and she's like, I think the number's 450 this week, like, and everyone's like, "What the hell is?"
Goldfish, right?
It's a lot of goldfish.
Yeah, like people are like, "What the heck?" I mean, I've had to tell her, I'm like, "Take it easy on, who you tell that we have a bunch of animals. People are gonna think we're hoarders or something." I mean, it's kind of, I mean, it's not gotten me in trouble, but I had a crazy neighbor at one point where like her dog was somehow poisoned. And like she was knocking on my door drunk one night, going, "You're, reptiles, poisoned my dog." And I'm thinking, no, that's definitely not how that happened. But
it's a weird connection.
Yeah, but people they don't know any better. I mean,
yeah. Reptile keeping will definitely, like, if you're in it long enough, it definitely shapes a lot of your life. I mean, I live in Texas because of it. I moved to Louisiana to be a zookeeper, which really got shaped because I was keeping reptiles. Right. Then I moved to Texas because Robert, who's not here tonight, who I met through reptiles, talked me into moving to Texas. And then the large majority of my friends are other reptile people.
Yeah.
And so all those connections. And, I couldn't imagine not having a room full of snakes. When we bought a house in Louisiana a year before we moved to Texas. We bought a house, but when we bought our house, it was what house has a big enough yard to hold my tortoises and has a big enough room for all of my reptiles, and then the rest of the things were secondary. Those were the first things we had to take, and then we'll figure out the bedroom stuff later.
Yep.
And then it also it shaped when I got married, because we only got so much vacation time, and we wanted to go to Daytona. So we got married the week before Daytona, so we could take off, get married, then honeymoon in Disney World, and then go up to Daytona that weekend, and then back home. So it definitely does a lot. Sam, how did reptile keeping shape? Oh wait, you don't keep reptiles.
You could, well, and it can shape a lot of different things. I mean, there's a lot of times where like I couldn't, me and the family can't go on vacation because it's egg laying season, or it's breeding season, or there was a lot of parties that I missed because I was busy feeding snakes, or or this, that, or whatever. But yeah, a lot of my best friends are reptile people. I always loved. Don't get me wrong. There's plenty of problems in the reptile hobby, but I mean, I always loved that it was something that we can all agree upon, regardless of, how we do things or things like that. Reptiles always brought people together. You go to these reptile shows, and I could kind of care less if I make any money or sell anything. I go to reptile shows because I want to hang out with all my friends. I mean, I want to see the vendors that I've made friends with, and the customers that I've made friends with. I mean, there's been plenty of times where people come up and they want to buy all my a wholesaler wants to come and buy every bull snake I have on the table, and it's like I don't want to sell them to you. I want to sell them to these 40 customers, because each one of these people I might end up being friends with. I mean, a lot of my best friends are, reptile people that, bought a snake from me, or they walked up to my table and, we started chatting, or we met on here. One of my best friends in the world, Jay Kohler, he's lives in Georgia. He doesn't keep a ton nowadays. But we've been friends for, I don't know, like 19 or 20 years. I mean, we met talking about reptiles online. We've never actually met in person. I mean, but I know, lots about his life. He knows lots about my life. I mean, we get together and catch up on over the phone. Yeah.
So Sam, how has my reptile keeping shaped your life?
Well, that's what I was actually going to say, is that something to remember is that it's not always someone who keeps 450 pets.
Right.
But this all started because you're 40 now. So how old were you? I don't remember how old you were.
Which one? The
first thing in Charleston, South Carolina, the ball python.
That I would have been like 4.
Because I was that idiot. Very honestly, you said it'd be kind of cool to have a snake, and so we did, and it was ball python, and from day one, he was in. I mean, in.
Because we got a red tail while I was in elementary school.
Yeah, in Columbus, we got the red tail, and there again, he was in, and so I don't keep any reptiles now. I haven't since he left the house, but. I guess I didn't then either. You did, but I approved it. But to be able to watch, and you'll experience it, I'm sure, and you have. Yeah. I mean, to watch your kid grow up with something that they're that passionate about, it's pretty awesome as a dad, and to be able to sit here on his podcast 35 years later and say, because I thought having a snake was kind of cool when I was a dumbass kid. I was 20 something years old,
Right.
So I guess that's how it shaped my life.
Yeah. And then you bought me a rainbow boa that we should have killed many, many times.
And also think about it. How many stupid ass enclosures
we built so many cages.
Build? Big, freaking 8 foot 3/4 inch plywood,
stupid heavy enclosures.
Holy shit.
I started out with all glass enclosures, and then I started building wood enclosures, and then I got introduced to vision cages, and I was like, oh, this is what it's all about. I could carry out a 6-foot cage by myself, and hose it out and clean it out and bring it back. And man, I thought that was the bee's knees.
My first 4-foot PVC cage that I was able to move around and lift it myself, I was like, and it replaced my 5 foot 3/4 inch wooden coffins that we built.
Of course, I remember thinking, there ain't no fucking way that's going to hold a snake. It's got to be what I built, right? Because all I do is overbuild shit.
It was overbuilt.
That's what I do.
I remember we built 2 of those things. They were 5 foot long, 2 foot deep, and I think maybe 2 foot tall.
Yeah.
Or no, I think they were 18 inches tall.
Yeah.
3/4 inch plywood on all sides except for the front. I mean, they wherever they currently are, they're probably still in one piece.
I was going to say, there's someone still rowing them across the ocean. I don't know.
I built like an 8x4x4 enclosure for my black throat monitor years ago, and that thing was bulletproof, but it was also heavier than shit. Man,
hell yeah.
You need 3 dudes to pick it up, but and to me, the passion is where I get my biggest rocks off is, being able to talk to, other passionate people about reptiles. Like I said, it brings people together. It doesn't matter, what I do for a living or, or this, that, or whatever. I mean, whatever reptiles are something that, we can talk about, and I love how passionate people are about them. I mean, it's one of the few hobbies that I can, think of or look into. I mean, that, people are that passionate about something. It's incredible. I mean, and there's so many different variation. There's so many different things that, you can never talk about it all. How you keep or what you keep, is fascinating to me because, I'm more of a snake guy, I mean? So I have mostly snakes. because I have to keep them in, mostly racks or, easy to care for enclosures because I've got hundreds of them. I mean, but then I'm fascinated by, folks that have, 10 snakes. I mean, or they have, one room of, a bunch of 4 and 5 foot, enclosures because they get to deck them out and do all kinds of cool, crazy, natural, bioactive enclosures and stuff like that. And I think that that's, awesome. I mean, so, or the species that you keep, that I don't have, maybe only have experience with working with them in a zoo or a, pet store, temporarily type thing. Yeah. I mean, and I can talk about that stuff for days. I mean, that to me is the coolest part. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to be successful enough, in doing it that it pays for itself and I can enjoy it and enjoy it with my family. And it's given me countless opportunities to get to know all kinds of people from all walks of life, talking about reptiles. I mean, I've been a part of, multiple podcasts like this where I get to, shoot the breeze and talk for, 2 or 3 hours about reptiles. And, that's awesome. I mean,
and I've been doing it now. So we bought that rainbow boa in 2003. So it's been 22 years straight of keeping reptiles. So like at this point, I could not imagine not having reptiles. Like maybe at some point I could imagine having less, but I couldn't imagine not having them. And then the connections I've made from being in it. Look, like I said earlier, and I'm going to say it all the time on my podcast because I have a Chinese alligator downstairs. It's like my dream animal. There's no way I meet the person that allows me to have a Chinese alligator without having this connection and having all this and meeting the people in this hobby, which I think is freaking awesome. Yeah. So I just, again, this hobby's done a lot for me between the people I've met and everything, and I like being able to do a lot for it. But we are up on 2 hours, and now we gotta wrap it up. So, if people want to talk to you, find out more about bull snakes or the 5 million other different species of snakes you currently keep, where can they get a hold of you?
You can go to our website. There's a way to message me through there. I'm also available on Facebook or Facebook Messenger. Living Legless Reptiles, or even just Travis Johnson.
You're one of those people that has a website. That's interesting.
Yeah, I built my own website.
It looks good.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I thought it was going to be complete many years ago, and it's not. I wanted to, have a separate page about each species that I keep, with lots of pictures and different tidbits and things. And I've got a fair amount of them in there, but it's fallen off the radar as far as like me keeping up to date. There's definitely whole pages where it's like my olive pythons, for instance. I think I posted a couple pictures on the collection page where it's just, a couple pictures of the olive python and page coming soon or something. I did that when they were born. I mean, they were babies when they came in from my buddy, and now I have adults that, been, multiple years old that are, ready to breed and stuff. And, I still haven't finished that damn page, but
you can delete the soon part of it if you want.
Yeah. Coming soon is a very relative term. I mean, but yeah, to me, I thought the website was super important, somewhere for people to go to, know more about me other than just, Facebook or, Facebook at one point poo-pooed, doing breeding or, sales and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I thought the website was just something that was, fairly easy to check out, and people could get more information, especially a lot of stuff I work with are, some of the information is, hard to find at best. I mean, so I thought that it would be a good resource. Like I said, one of these days I'll get around to making it better, but I think it's, for what it is, it's a cool, it's a good way to get a hold of me or get some Living Legless Reptiles merch if you want it. Yeah, it's
so go check out livinglegless.com.
Yep, livinglegless.com. But yeah, anybody can reach out to me. I'm always happy to chat. I'm a very busy guy. I mean, I've got 2 teenage kids, hundreds of snakes to take care of, and I work a 50 something plus hour a day, or a week job. I'm an operations manager for a security company, so I do I work a lot. But yeah, I'm always happy to chat reptiles. So if people have questions or something, don't hesitate to reach out. Questions aren't stupid. And to me, the biggest thing that I can put forward as far as communication goes is that I'm always happy to chat reptiles, because I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't learn from, other reptile keepers, more experienced keepers, that I idolized and asked a lot of questions. And, when I first worked at that reptile zoo, I didn't work there. I just showed up and I followed the curator around. His name's Toby Derbyshire. He's a great dude. I followed him around, for hours on end, asking him, ridiculous questions. And eventually he started handing me cleaning supplies, and he's like, "You're going to clean this cage."
You're going to be here, might as well work.
Yeah. If you're going to bother me for hours, you're going to clean these cages. And eventually they were like, "Oh, well, maybe we should pay you for this."
So Kyle in the chat says he wonders if any person that was born without legs has ever tried to buy your domain.
Oh, it's okay. Quick funny story. So I work for a security company, and my private email is I have a work email, but my personal email is livinglegless@yahoo.com. And the corporate office had reached out to my office because I was supposed to go down and do like a corporate training, and they reached out because they were concerned about making sure that they had given me proper accommodations for my disability. And I thought that was the funniest thing ever. And they made a big stink of it when I actually went down there. For the class.
You want the parking pass and the van and everything else that comes with it.
Yeah, they were really, I was very appreciative that they were so concerned with, accommodating me. But that was a super funny situation. I've actually always worried about that. I worried about, some, organization or some individual getting all bent out of shape with me about, that I sell reptiles and I don't, I'm not like selling.
But you have legs. How dare you have legs?
Yeah. But it was something that I came up with. I was like thinking about, I was just trying to express, talking passionately about reptiles, and that I was talking about how cool reptiles can be. And, this animal does this and this animal does that. And, after having this experience, you can know what it's like to be living legless. you know, and we were just talking about, and then I bounced around a couple different like reptile name ideas, and I was talking to a couple different buddies about, you know, this, and they were like, they were all kind of in unison, like, dude, that's the name. Like, I was like, what are you talking about? They're like, Living Legless. And I was like, all right. And then, I mean, I just kind of ran with it. But,
so Kyle
but yeah,
says,
I have been asked if I was a paraplegic. I mean,
Kyle says they all expect Lieutenant Dan from Forrest Gump. So now you need to make Lieutenant
Yep.
Dan shirts that say Living Legless Reptiles on it.
I should. I
need to name one of
definitely
your
should.
snakes Lieutenant Dan. He's your spokesperson.
Yeah, it's super funny.
All right. Well, we've got to wrap out. Travis, stay around for a second. Everyone else, we will be back next week with somebody. I'll figure that out between now and next week. But thank y'all for hanging out. See y'all next week. Goodbye. 1 second.